Bangladesh has experienced a student revolution. The interim government is now led by a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Does that solve all the problems? By far not. The country is extremely poor and one of the most vulnerable to the climate crisis. At the sidelines of the International Climate Conference in Baku, Azerbaijan, I'm now joined by Rizwana Hasan. Welcome. Rizwana, you were previously on the other side of the negotiations as an activist, I think. Now you are experiencing the other side of things. Can you share your personal view, your personal experience and your perspectives of this conference here?
I think this conference on many counts is proving very slow, and we have heard about emission gap and mitigation gap, but I can clearly feel an ambition gap. So while countries that are most vulnerable are pressing for concrete commitment for mitigation targets, concrete commitment for finance to facilitate adaptation actions on ground, we see that the rich and developed countries and the major polluters are still reluctant. And they are bringing in new words into the text around which you have to invest energy. But our demands are straightforward, that it has already been pretty late. We can't afford a temperature rise above 1.5 degrees. There is clear gap in terms of finance for adaptation and also for mitigation. We need to really bridge the gap, but instead the way the major polluters are talking, most of the major polluters, it seems that they are not appreciating our realities, and that bridge gapping is yet to take place.
You were mentioning your realities, the realities of your people in Bangladesh, which experienced severe floods only this September, affecting 6 million people, which were declared as one of the worst climate disasters by Bangladeshi officials. How is the government reacting or able to react to those catastrophes?
See, the government is the first door of assistance for the people. So the Bangladeshi communities and the government know how to tackle flood. But this time, the two floods were of unprecedented scale. So while we know how to operate rescue, this time when we were sending the people from army to conduct the rescue operation, even we could not trace the army people who were going there, because the water was rising by meters and in every hour. So this time was actually very, very challenging, and we managed well because there was volunteerism from all walks of the society. Everybody rushed to the place, but it was very difficult to get access. And this time we realized that whatever preparations we have taken in last 52, 53 years, that is not enough. Both in terms of logistics that you need, both in terms of the preparation that you need in sending the rescuers. So we realized that we have got rescue boats, but we this time realized that we actually do not have enough number of rescue boats, and this is because the climatic challenges are making things worse for us. So what happened was the interim government took over the responsibility of running the country at a time when our economy was in a very bad shape already. And now we are having to deal with ensuring supply of everyday food items in the market, because the second flood really impacted the crop yield. So it's like impacting your sustainable, so it's like impacting the efforts of the government of Bangladesh in achieving the sustainable development goal. We are now seeing more and more people faced with poverty. We are now seeing a disruption in the production of the food system. We are now seeing more and more people not having access to water. So the challenges for the government of Bangladesh have really proven to be more difficult, because here at the international level, we are not doing enough to tackle the climate crisis.
You are mentioning the level of engagement, finance is the main topic here. A big question is also who is paying who and to which extent. Countries, least developed countries, but developing countries have thrown a number in, $1 trillion, 1.3. Industrialized countries want China to step up and pay as well. These categories date back to 1992. China also emits almost as much as the EU today. Are those categories still fair?
You see, there is one question of historical emission based on which the UN FCCC convention was adopted. China was not a factor at that point of time. Subsequently, when we got into the Paris Agreement, we got all countries to commit that they will also take on mitigation actions. In that respect, it is not only the ones who are having the historical responsibilities to take on mitigation action, it also falls squarely on all of us to take on mitigation actions through our NDCs. And China, being a major emitter, has actually taken concrete steps to mitigate. Now, whether it will agree to provide finance still remains the question to be answered, but the countries like ours, the vulnerable countries, have made it clear that this time we need adequate funding. We need the funding to come from the developed countries. We need the funding to come from through the UN windows. We really don't want market-based instruments to be used against our financial needs. We have asked for transparency and accountability. We have asked for quantity.
You want China to pay?
For me, big polluters should take on the responsibility. They should first change their model of development. There is clear call to switch from fossil fuel driven economy to models that are much more sustainable. So for me, we are not taking a strong position that China should pay, but if China comes forward and pays, that will be welcomed.
The Bangladesh Revolution, also known as the July Revolution, refers to the student uprising that made the end to the 15-year autocratic rule of the Awami League in August this year. Do you think there is a link between the uprising against the elites and the poverty, which also is connected to climate damages?
The movement had a name, and the name is Movement Against Discrimination. It's an anti-discrimination movement that started with a discrimination that exists in the recruitment of public services. But eventually it turned out as a movement against the government because of how the government handled it. Of course, there were grievances, of course, there were agitation in the society about one party sticking to power without proper vote, and there was so much of corruption in the country going on. So what started as an anti-discrimination movement in one given area eventually became an anti-government movement and resulted in ousting the most unpopular government Bangladesh ever had in its history. And now the call in the society is to stick to that anti-discrimination slogan of the movement. We are finding out where in the society, where in the system, where in the processes, where in the practices, where in the norms, we have elements that are discriminatory. I won't say that it was a movement of the deprived against the elites, but I would certainly say that it was a movement of the deprived for rectifying the systems that often are discriminatory.
Now you're in power. Before you were activists, now you're in power. What can you change? What will you change? Or what can't you change?
That's a tough question. I'm not in power. I've taken on responsibility. Changing mindset has become very crucial. Being under autocratic regime for 15 years has an impact on your psyche. It teaches you to look at things in certain directions. And the fascist regime continued for 15 years, not only by itself. It has created its support bases in all the public sectors. So my struggle as a member of the interim government, and the struggle of the interim government is to first ensure that the mindset changes and the practices changes. What I can envisage as to my role is addressing some of the major environmental challenges of the country, working with the new generation that actually led the movement in a political way, so that not only a forest is protected, but the young generation realizes why the forest needs to be protected. This realization should not only be in ecological terms, it should also have a political backup behind the understanding. So one is to address the major environmental issues and to engage with the youngsters and make sure that they have the right environmental political understanding of things.
Two last questions. Will you candidate as a minister in the elections?
If I wanted to do that, I could have done it long back because I come of a political family. I am in politics because I talk about people's rights. When you talk about people's rights, that becomes a political agenda. But I don't think I'll be joining any given party. But as they say, there is no last word in politics.
Rizwana, if you had one wish to make for your country or for international climate diplomacy, what would it be?
For my country, it would be to have a Bangladesh that will be open, that will be progressive, that will be truly democratic, and that will be respectful to all caste, colors and religion. As for my agenda, it will be leaving behind some marks so that my successor can carry on from that point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.